Okay. So yeah, there's anyways, welcome guys. This is a long overdue episode. This is gonna be our July 4th episode.
Yep.
So happy July 4th, happy Independence Day to all the Americans out there.
Happy Canada Day to any Canadians who might be watching this.
Yeah. Time of recording
Yes.
Is very much Canada Day.
Okay.
And it segues us perfectly into our subject for today, which would be what is the most American car out there right now? So there's a couple ways I'll introduce, and then we can kind of pivot from here. But we can obviously look at just straight numbers of where they're made, even designed, all the parts, all the components, where it's assembled, and then where it's most purchased from. But also look at like influences, because if it happened to be a Toyota Crown was the most American car in the world, it would just wouldn't make sense, even if it was fully built here. So I think it's a multifaceted question. I think there's a lot of room for interpretation. And that's going to be our topic for today. We got a lot of good episodes coming up, a lot of cool topics, and hope you guys enjoy. So Scott, start us off with what you found and what you think is the most American car.
Well, the most American car is a car I owned, which is a Mustang GT, which is 77% made in America. Like 77% of the parts are sourced from America. And I think culturally it is like an absolute American icon. So I'm going to go with the Mustang. Completely culturally, like you said, and based on parts. I don't think it gets more American than a Mustang. It's what Europeans think of when they think of American cars. It is, period, like the most American car that exists.
Definitely not a wrong answer by any means. That's a good choice.
And you can get it in any flavor you want, which I think is super American. Which it's like, if you want a Mustang to be a rental car with a convertible, you can, with an automatic, you can do that, and then you can go get a GT500 if you want to go to the track, or a GT350 if you want something that revs high and is light. I mean, you can get anything.
You need a GT500 to show off at Cars and Coffee.
No, and go really fast at a track, because you don't need to buy a GT2 RS to go fast.
Do you want to mention anything about how they jump curbs randomly or eat people?
Yeah, I think that's part of it being American.
How American is that?
It guns down innocent bystanders.
No to pedestrians.
No comment.
I'm the only one on the road. This is my road. I have to agree with the GT. That was also my choice. But I think it's interesting in that it's, the Mustang brand through the years has always stood as like an American icon. You go to England and ask them what an American car is, and most likely they'll pull up a picture of a Ford F-150 or a Mustang. But like, I think Ford knows that. They're obviously not dumb. They've created the Mach-E to try to piggyback on that brand equity that they built out through the decades, and trying to build an electric brand out of it. So they're not dumb. They know what they're doing. They're going to still ride that, but it is.
I didn't even think about the Mach-E. Yeah, that's a super interesting point, because like America is totally leading in the EV space, period.
Yeah.
No one's even close. The American car companies.
Yeah, because of one brand.
Yeah, and the Mustang brand, even though it's not really a traditional Mustang, is at the forefront of that. Like outside of Tesla, it's pretty much the first like usable EV, because like the Bolt exists, but it's tiny and it's useless. Like the Mach-E is useful for a family, and it's reasonably priced.
Yeah, no, I mean they're definitely doing a good job with it. And I think that they did I think it was a smart play to like attribute it to the Mustang nomenclature, because like you guys, were just saying, it has, secular weight.
For sure.
It's
just gonna be
also
a-
fast.
It is fast.
It is also fast.
That it is, yes.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I mean, you bring up Tesla, which is also quite high up there on the American-made percentages. They're like all above 60%. On similar studies, like Honda was found to be pretty high up there too. Obviously, it's not an American company, but in terms of parts made, where they're developed, where they're engineered, so much of it comes from just being in the US.
Honda is almost an American company at this point. Like Ohio and Alabama, between the two of those places, Honda has a huge presence in America. And they're super involved in, we were all a part of it. They're super involved in the collegiate automotive engineering teams. Like they run them. So when you come up in the engineering system in America, Honda is right there if you're interested in cars. Like it is the most obvious one. Like at Penn State, Honda is still sponsoring the undergrad stuff. And the graduate school is where like Volvo and Ford were actually giving money. So if you're coming up in engineering in America, you're gonna be exposed to
Seeing it.
Honda.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Immediately.
Yeah.
But I think it's an interesting talking point, and we can all just be speculative on how these are going to like take off from here. But is our most American car looking forward into the future? If you were to be completely speculative about where the direction's heading, what would you say the American, if you could think of one car, was it going to be a Model S? Was it going to stay?
No, it's a Mustang. It's a Mustang.
Okay, why?
Because it's gonna have one, it's the only like pony car that actually had a continuous lineage. So it's always been a part of American culture. You have Steve McQueen in Bullitt, then Ken Block drove that, like the Unicorn is a Mustang in Gymkhana, which is like iconic in pop culture now for in the automotive world, just like Bullitt was back then. You have that crazy fun haver that Von Gittin Jr. did out of the Mach-E, and they're just continually trying to put themselves in the automotive pop culture. I think the Mustang's just going to continue to be ingrained. Tesla just doesn't do that.
No, they're definitely.
It'll never have, no small kid is going to watch YouTube videos about a Tesla unless it's like an acceleration video, which they'll forget about.
Or a self-driving video that failed.
Yeah. I think when it comes to culture, like kids come back to Gymkhana and they come back to Von Gittin Jr. and
that's car culture, right? That's not.
Yeah, I think you're on the right
is.
track. I think you're on the right track that it is going to be a vehicle or you could even narrow it down to like a particular model that is going to like be the next icon, something that either has lineage or harks back to something.
Yeah, the Corvette probably is on par with it too. Because
is it?
Yes.
I mean, what about the argument about the F-150?
I just don't think there's
the full
So
size.
okay, yeah. So that
Full
Code,
size.
I'm glad you brought that up. So when I first started doing research for this, I was under the impression that we were doing the most American car that is being produced right now or will be produced. So if you don't mind, I would love to pull up my PowerPoint and make my case.
I want to see this
for the F-150.
All right, let's see. Let me share my screen.
You should be able to let me know if you have any
Yeah,
trouble.
I think I'm good. Okay. Can we see it?
Oh yeah.
Oh my God.
Oh yeah. This is what I'm talking about.
God bless America. God bless the Navy. God bless our troops. I had some fun with this. I had a little bit of downtime.
This is fantastic.
So I know it isn't out yet, but to your point, like what is the most American vehicle kind of coming up or whatever? I probably should have put a picture, but I'm gonna go with the Escalade V. So if we, excuse me a second. Good night. If we go back to the beginning, okay, the Escalade first entered the market in, 99, 98, the GMT 400s. I actually saw a white first gen Escalade on the road today, and I was like, wow, that's awesome. At the time, it was identical to the Yukon. One thing that I found that was pretty interesting is 10 months from product approval through production, which is like a surprisingly quick turnaround for a vehicle like that. The base price, so I think it only had two options in 99, which was like roof bars and paint. And it started at 46,000, which for reference, a P38 was 66,000 to start, which is a lot.
Because it's better.
Listen, I would have happily done this review in 1999 if I was old enough to get my hands on either of those things, but I wasn't. Interestingly, it had the 5.7 that just came in like all of the full size trucks at the time. And when the Navigator came out in 98, it had a more powerful motor. It's been in production in Texas for a long time, so definitely a lot of American parts. Also, I thought it was pretty interesting that it was only, 2 inches longer than a Taurus. Like, it, relatively speaking, it wasn't massive, because we all know how freaking massive they are now.
Well, it didn't get really big till the second gen, right?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
just a few kind of notable things to the Escalade nomenclature. Derives from French to scale to climb, which is escalader. I don't speak French. I don't care to speak French. I don't like French people. Just a country you drive through to get to Italy, quote Hammond. I don't know.
A place where Germany and Britain can solve their differences or whatever.
Yeah,
They always tell them, right?
yeah, exactly. I mean, like we all know like how much pop culture has referenced and fed into the Escalade, and kind of like really made the luxury full-size SUV like a segment. I mean, like, you had like Mike Jordan driving around in P38s and 99 and 2000 and stuff like that, but it really wasn't until like I have here, like 3-6 Mafia and some of Jay-Z and like some of these rappers got their hands on it. I also do remember, so the second gen, so like the 04s, 02, I think it was 03 actually, to be specific, was the first time that they offered an OEM 20-inch wheel on a truck. And they were those chrome 10 spokes, and I still love those wheels to this day. They make the Escalade look so good. I couldn't explain the engineering behind it, but the first variable valve timing in a truck with that type of motor was pretty surprising. I mean, that was relatively innovative for that segment. And then also I found it really interesting that this is the first time you can get a diesel in a Cadillac since 1985. I don't know if you guys have ever seen a 1985. I think it was sedan and coupe de Villes only, but they had
the 6.5 diesel.
Yes, exactly. They had the 6.5 from like the Hummer. It was the strangest freaking thing, but
that engine is a turd.
Oh, it's awful. It's absolutely horrible. It's so terrible, but
it just fries cylinder 8 like a lot.
Yes,
like
yeah, the motor was terrible.
Terrible motor.
I saw one on Albany Craigslist like last summer for like 13 grand. The thing was mint and had like no miles, and I was like, yeah, because you literally can't drive it without it breaking. Like, it's just so bad. But it's cool nonetheless. The new diesel motor is actually pretty good from what I've heard. But just like,
how much more MPG do you actually get? Because like GM V8s actually get decent gas mileage now.
From the variable valve timing, you're saying?
No, but what's the point of getting a diesel? What is it, like
from
3 MPG?
Yeah,
new body?
I don't know. I mean, honestly, I think more than anything, it's like,
towing power.
Yeah, towing power. Just if Bob and Mary want to take the kids in their boat to the lake, like
Because
uh,
they need a tow rating of 15,000 to tow their other RV or something.
yeah,
I don't know.
exactly.
I think you're
Something.
forgetting Florida exists where people tow their like 40-foot center consoles regularly.
So the Escalade V specifically narrowing down to this is like so American and so like on the forefront of what I think of when you think of like American vehicles and also like cutting edge. So it's got oh shit, I just forgot the nomenclature for the LT motor in it, but 683 foot-pounds of torque. So more torque than the Urus, more torque than the W12 Bentayga and Bentayga Speed, more torque than any AMG. Basically, you need to go to an EV, a ridiculously high revving V12, or a diesel truck, right? So like a Dodge, with a Cummins.
Like even like the 707 DBX.
Well, so as you can see, the only thing with more power
Yeah.
and horsepower and torque is the DBX, which is going to be like what 500,000 out the door probably.
Yeah. So it's just basically like, so what is the power on an Escalade V? I don't know the specs on it.
So the Escalade V power is a 680 foot-pounds of torque, and I think it was like 660.
668.
Yeah.
Oh, so it probably uses like what the like
Supercharged
C7
Z06.
Z06?
Yeah, it's the C7 Z06.
Yeah, exactly.
With a bit
Just,
more
like, tweak
power,
it.
actually. It's kind of
power.
in, but it's in
Because, like,
between the
650,
Z06 and ZR1.
That's what you need.
So also, I think it's absolutely mental that they put an electronic LSD in this truck. It has a track mode, which just sounds like absolutely horrifying. The limit has to be like 60 miles an hour. I'm sure it's like an absolute riot, but that's just like, I mean, it's on par with like, every vehicle nowadays has like, sport.
It's 2 feet longer than a Range Rover long wheelbase.
Yes. Yes.
And it has a track mode.
So some of the like, cutting edge
This is
features that it
fantastic.
has is an LSD, which is mental. It's got Super Cruise, which is like, autonomy level 2 driving. It's got, so I think we spoke about it before, but like the new Navigator is sick and has those like 36-way seats that are basically like electric Ames chairs.
Yeah,
This
that's like what the Continental debuted, right?
Yeah,
The
exactly.
one with like the legs, like
Yeah, super, super cool. So this thing doesn't have seats that are that fancy. I will say I thought they looked pretty good. It had a nice mix of like perforation, quilting, just like, I mean, they're comfy captain's chairs for dudes that are overweight, basically. But I digress. They're really cool because they have speakers in the top of the headrest, like right here, along with a bunch of other speakers, and then also 28 amps. I'm sure the sound system thumps. It's AKG, which I thought was kind of surprising because that's not a typical, I mean, Scott, you can speak to this, but it's not like a Bose, it's not a name, it's not an Alpine, Bowers and Wilkins. Usually you hear a lot more like household names. And then again, kind of tying it back to what I was saying before, RZA, RZA, the rapper, did a commercial for Cadillac promoting this sound system.
What's the power on the sound system?
I couldn't find that
Bentley?
figure. I couldn't find how many.
Wasn't the Bentley like 2,000 watts or something outrageous?
Yeah, it's the 1900.
Yeah, 1900.
It's just a number at that point.
Yeah, literally.
You can't hear it.
Blow your eardrums out.
Yeah.
And then some of the other notables that they had is that like, so the whole like dashboard basically is like this one giant curved screen, and then there's like a sub screen where you could have in theory like a speedometer and a tachometer. So there's some, I think the website said, like the promotional content said that there's 38 inches of screen, which is just like ridiculous. Like if you thought, the S-Class had a big screen or the Tesla had a big screen, this is
Doesn't it have a dedicated passenger infotainment system too?
Yeah, it does.
It's insane.
Yeah, it's mental. It's absolutely
How does that
mental.
compare to like the Grand Wagoneer?
Yeah.
I guess that would be his,
Also, like
competitor, right? At that
Su-
point.
The Grand Wagoneer does not have a Grand Wagoneer Hellcat, so
they
not
should.
the same.
Not yet. Come on.
Yeah, right. Not yet. Also super granular. This is again just like personal preference, but it has like a shifter that like you put your hand around, kind of like what's in the M4 almost, where you just like click it into gear. And I personally I like that a lot. I feel like that really fits like the truck and SUV kind of segment. I'm not a huge fan of like
You should have to do this. That'd be even better.
Yeah, I agree.
On the
I
column,
agree, but
in
I
an
would
Escalade,
imagine
it's a GM.
I know. I'm a huge fan of the column shift trucks, but I'd imagine with like the screens, they didn't want to do that. But I know this Cadillac innovating like they did in the 1950s is kind of a vague point. I was struggling to find like hard evidence that I wanted to present, but basically in 1954, Cadillac came out with what was called the Autronic Eye, and that was the first time that there was a sensor and a mechanical relay, basically, where if it saw headlights coming, it would dim your high beams for you. And then when it no longer detected any light, it would put them back on. So all you had to do was turn your high beams on, which is pretty mind-blowing. 1954, that didn't become an option on Mercedes Benzes until 2012. So
that was Matrix LED before there ever was.
Yeah, exactly. And then in 1958, they worked with, I want to say it was Bosch, to have a sensor in the windscreen that if it detected water, right, so if it started to rain, it would put the soft top up and close the windows, which for 1958 is like unreal technology to me.
Does that have a speed limit on it? Because I could totally imagine like being insane at highway speed.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think it was like a parked tank thing. So it's like if like the car is left unattended with the top down and it feels it. But it was like a pretty long article. I didn't read a lot about it. There wasn't. Anyways.
So like bringing it back to Escalade V.
Yeah.
You're mentioning a bunch of convenience features, and let's say like convenience features are the hallmark of what American luxury is.
Yeah.
Now we're seeing, I mean, Super Cruise is probably the closest thing that I've seen, at least on the Cadillac, unless you can, all the nicks and crannies and small convenience bits that I've never heard about. But are there equally as pioneering convenience features on this Escalade V? I know Tesla likes to talk about all their stuff. I mean, now we're seeing cars that pull out of parking spaces and drive themselves.
Yeah.
Tell me about the Escalade V and how it kind of keeps that legacy going.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, so unfortunately, like I was doing a lot of clicking around on Cadillac's website, and it's still like all promotional content, so it's kind of limited. But I know like it's got the Super Cruise, like it's gonna have massage seats. Like I think with the kind of limited information I could gather, it really just like harks back to what I think of when I think of like American vehicles being opulent and just like really making a statement in like kind of in everything, right? So it's like, okay, yeah, a Mustang is a very American vehicle, but it makes a statement in the sense that like, when Scott puts his foot down on the on-ramp, everyone can hear him for 7 miles around. Or
actually mine.
a Tesla is an American vehicle, but it's like, okay, with Tesla, everyone thinks of Elon, which is he's kind of a controversial figure, and like people think of like the plaid acceleration, like squeaky interiors. But like when you see Escalade V, I just think to myself like like it's so excessive, but not in like T-Rex excessive, just like 1950s Cadillac, like a dude, an executive who just got a big bonus and like bought a Coupe de Ville for $5,000, which was maybe $800 cheaper than like your average house kind of thing. I apologize, I don't have more specific information, but I'm sure, we'll find out more as more info comes up. As you pointed out earlier, it's absolutely massive. So an ESV is 227 inches long, and the L405 in long wheelbase, which is the outgoing Land Rover model, there's no figures on the new long wheelbase yet, was 203.2 inches long or something, which is absolutely mental. I mean, the thing is a literal like aircraft carrier. It's huge. Which, I think really speaks to the point that I was just making, where it's like, in 1955, when you saw, a Coupe de Ville going down the road, like that thing went by for 6 seconds. It's crazy. Also, I don't remember if there was a weight figure on the truck, but 1/10 of a second slower than an SVR is mental for a vehicle that big. The G-Wagon kind of smokes it. I think the G-Wagon's almost a full second faster.
The G-Wagon is small though.
The G-Wagon is small, and it probably weighs something like 2,000 to 1,500 pounds less. I mean, like it is.
How much does the Escalade weigh? I'll look it up right now while we're on that.
I don't know. If I had to guess, I'd probably say in the neighborhood of like 6,800 pounds, like bone dry.
Yeah, it's gonna be big because it's still based on a truck.
Yeah, they're saying Escalade V 6,400.
Okay.
Nice.
Yeah. Nice.
So,
and then just some data that I gathered on like basically the Escalade and truck sales. So in 2020, they did 20,000 units, which, is not a lot, but to double their sales in 2021 is crazy. They haven't seen sales like that since 2006, which is pretty unbelievable.
Just for the V, or is this just the current?
This is just Escalade numbers.
Yeah, the V is a new thing for the Escalade.
Yeah, the V is a new thing. So the Escalade has done a couple of limited editions, like final production stuff, like first year production stuff.
Well, you could also get the 6.2. So
what do you mean?
You can get a kind of fast Escalade for a long time. Like they.
Oh yeah,
you could option them with the 6.2, not just the 5.7.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Yeah, so they went 5.7, and then they went the GMC 800s had this 6-liter Vortec, which is honestly like kind of a badass motor. And then the gen after that, so I don't remember what the nomenclature is for the body style, but it was either 5.3 or 6.2. And the 6.2s were rated out like 420 horsepower and 400 and something foot-pounds of torque. I mean, relatively speaking, they partied pretty hard for
the 6.2 is stout.
Yeah, the 6.2 is very stout.
What's the update? I'm sorry to interrupt, but for the update from 2020 to 2021, was that the new gen? Is that when it came out?
Yes.
So I mean, usually when you product launch and everything, it was just like the end of that generation. So I mean, there has to be a skew on this is a rollout of the previous generation. People aren't buying it. Know that the new
that's a very valid point that I honestly didn't even factor in when I was looking up these numbers. But I also just thought that it was like pretty surprising that it jumped.
How did it compare to the Range Rover?
What's that?
How does it compare to the Range Rover?
In terms of units sold?
Yeah.
You want to guess?
I bet you it loses.
You think the Escalade loses to the Range Rover?
Yeah.
All Range Rovers or just full size Range Rover?
Just full size.
So
the Range Rover
Tahoe. I'm gonna guess the other end. I'm gonna guess Cadillac sells twice the amount.
Twice?
Yeah. The figures, if I remember the figures correctly, so last year Cadillac Escalade did 40,000 units. It was just shy of 40,000. It was like high 39s. If I remember correctly, Land Rover, Range Rover units for 2021 was in the neighborhood of 17,000 units.
It's because it's gotta be just all the the limo use services. They buy them in like bulk.
exactly. So
The
That's like
Costco
like
version of an
most.
well,
Escalade.
so I mean, like look at the bottom line. So like the Tahoe sales jumped 20% with the introduction of the new body. I mean, think about all like the suburban moms that are rocking new Tahoes right now, and that was the slowest growth at 20%. And
They
then
just don't exist where I live then, because I see a lot of Grand Wagoneers actually and Range Rovers.
That's because South Maine is basically
I
like
I
the
don't
gay
see
cousin of the
Tahoe,
US.
Yukon, and Escalade. Like I just don't see them.
I
You
mean,
just don't.
It's because you
I
don't live
don't.
in Oklahoma, but
Yeah, pretty much. Like even back in like Niskuna, like not a day went by that I probably didn't see like 5 Tahoes. And I would be completely lying if I said every time I saw like a suburban AT4, I was like, wow, that's huge and pimping, and I want one. I have zero need
Yeah.
for it, but like they are absolutely knocking it out of the park with them. Um,
And
and
I
I
guess it's
can't.
Jeeps around here because I see it's all Grand Cherokees and like Wranglers
I'm
or
s-
Range Rover
I'm so
Sports.
stoked for the Escalade V. I have been wishing that they have done this for a long time. I mean, you know, we've had the Jeep SRT for a long time. There was the Durango RT. Like, there have been plenty of other versions of fast trucks at,
Oh, there's a Durango Hellcat.
yeah, exactly. You know, the Range Rover you can get with the supercharged 5 liter, the GL63, the ML63. Like, you know, this is like the kind of like you know, forefront and image, like brand image that I've wanted to see from the Escalade for a really, really long time, because I always thought like, wow, you're putting the 6.2 in this, like 6.2 is a great motor. You give it to John Hennessy, who's going to absolutely rob you for 50 grand. And now you have an 850 horsepower, like, you know, Texas oil money, tires smoking, 8-seating, you know, gun tooting, rootin' tooting, like, you know, big black SUV. Like, come
wait,
on, like we're
do you have it or does the shop own it? Because I don't think John Hennessy will ever actually deliver your car. He'll just keep
yeah.
it.
Well, okay, so yeah, that's a big asterisk that I should have put on that point. But I mean, you get the point that I'm making. You know, I
Yeah.
really think it was kind of a long time missed opportunity now that gas is $7 a gallon or whatever. But I'm happy to see it's here.
That doesn't matter. Based
Well,
on my
so
trip last week to California, no one gives a shit.
absolutely. And as you can see by, you know, the jump in sales, people really like don't give a shit. I will also say, you know, I'm curious to see how it looks once production comes and once they start kind of hitting the streets. I know that
It
like,
also probably, like back to the gas thing, I think it was a bigger deal in like 2010 when stuff got in the teens.
yeah,
But I mean, even a Raptor can get 18 now. So it's not even really a sacrifice when it comes to gas mileage.
yeah. I mean, you know, it's got the 10-speed and has overdrive, so I'm sure you'll be able to get at least like some.
And it's a
highway
GM
mileage.
product, so it's probably actually going to get decent gas mileage.
But what I was about to say is, you know, I'm curious to see what's going to happen. It's got all of this like, you know, crazy awesome electronic features. I know there's still some issues with like chip shortages and whatnot. So hopefully that doesn't push the V back. This new gen, the GMT 1XX, or, you know, 1000, whatever it is, 1100 something, got pushed back because of COVID. So they pushed it back like half a year. But the starting price, I think, is like 130 or maybe 150 or something, which
For the V?
yeah, which is like a very competitive price for a lot of vehicle.
Yeah, that is actually
that's-
super competitive. Because when I
That's
picked up,
America for you.
yeah,
And
when I picked up my Wrangler, every Grand Wagoneer, granted it's a 6.4, so like they're basic. They have like the good Hemi.
so
They're still 120 grand. So 10 grand more to get an Escalade V seems like a really good deal.
yeah, so thank you for coming to my TED Talk. I love the Escalade V. I love the Escalade, and
I mean, what do you think it needs that actually be successful? Like, does it have to become like a part of culture? Like the second to me, the second gen Escalade is the one that was like ingrained
Oh yeah, I mean
in
that's
American culture.
that's what peaked at 40,000 units in 06. That was the final year of the GMT 800 because it was like all of G Unit had an Escalade. All
Yeah,
of
I'm saying,
36 Mafia had one of those.
does this one become that? Is the Escalade cool again?
I really think it does. I really think it does. You know, the Escalade has been selling well. The new body Escalade has a lot of presence, like specifically has a lot more presence than the Yukon Denali and the Tahoe, which I think in some of the previous generations, like if you got, like a black one or, you got one that had like the chrome options, it sometimes was like, okay, like, that's a really good looking Tahoe, but then a Escalade would pull up and you're like, yeah, that kind of just looks the same. And I think this really kind of is that one.
Well, yeah, that was like the
step.
difference in the second gen too, is the Escalade actually looked different.
Right. Exactly.
Like it genuinely stood out. Yeah, and the new Escalade does look really good. I've seen a couple of them,
and
looks pretty awesome.
like the Escalade. So I mean, we all know that Cadillac has had like some image issues for a long time, but basically, like in 2006, the final year, they did some limited edition stuff, and they introduced like, trying to remember what it was. Actually, that's a bad example. I can't remember what it was for 2006, but I know that when they did the next refresh, the 2010s, they introduced the platinum line of trim, and that was like, you got massaging seats, you got like really nice, like supple real leather, you got heated and ventilated seats front and rear as standard. And like, for 2010, that was stuff that you're seeing in like, S classes, AMGs. I want to say the A8 had heated rear seats if you got the cold weather package. I mean, they were really still kind of on the cusp of like, innovative luxury and convenience features and whatnot, at reasonable price point, because in 2010, Range Rovers had televisions in the headrest, albeit they were small and kind of terrible, but I don't even think they had the option for heated or ventilated rear seats at the time.
Yeah, they did. Yeah,
they did.
Yeah, my LR3 has heated rear seats.
Okay, so
it's like,
but did the 322 have vented rear seats? I don't think so.
No, but definitely had heated rear seats.
And I don't think the L322 ever had a third row, right?
The Range Rover never had a third row till the brand new one.
Yeah.
Even the long wheelbase L405 didn't have a third row.
So, I just think like, also, I think that because it has had such a relatively speaking long production run and has kind of held its status for this long, this is a great, like, Rocky IV, just like, yeah, we love him, like, we're glad he's back kind of thing. I think I'm very excited for it to summarize it.
I like your point.
I think it has to be good enough to suck celebrities out of a Range Rover in order for it to actually become like cool again.
I don't know if either of them will, and that's going to bring me to my car, because it wouldn't be interesting nor talk worthy if I were just to agree with both of you. I present to you my most American car of 2022.
A Bugatti Veyron.
Yes.
The Hummer
Yes.
EV.
Yes. That's a
must
great
be
choice.
the Hummer
I
EV.
honestly totally forgot about that.
First of all, it's all the talking points and arguments that you make about the Escalade just gets enlarged by how much larger and more stupid and more American.
It's even more, but my dad.
Yeah, but my dad. It is way more powerful, way heavier. Price wise, supposedly starts at 112, but we'll see with this market. So
I've seen them listed for 290.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. But that's the market we're in, and so be it. But it can't be American if it's not a ridiculous bargain at the sacrifice of sometimes quality.
Actually, I'm gonna go ahead and agree with Codero Haber. If we were talking about like culture and cool people buying them, this is going to be the one that they buy.
This
Oh,
is
for
the
sure.
It
this is
just is.
the this is the Escalade from 2002, but now instead of
I think every single
you're-
athlete is going to buy one of those.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. That's a great
and
choice.
I think
Um,
it's for what it is, it's so outrageous, and it's like it's almost the fact that it's an EV is like an afterthought compared to all of this, because it's
I
still like
need that lunar
wildly
interior.
inefficient. It's still a Hummer through and through, but this time like it can basically
Just as a
unashamedly be itself without
two
like
quick asides,
yeah.
I just pulled up cars and bids, and 3 of the new. Oh no, wow, they're really expensive. So there's been
Over 250.
there's been 235, 260, 233, 227, 210, 215, all on new bodies, which is
Oh my
mental.
God.
So I think you make a fantastic point, and I think that this is going to be the new status quo for basically all of Hollywood, because they love their status mobiles, but they're also Californians and they love avocados and electric vehicles.
Well, Ashton Kutcher was one of the first owners.
Yeah, exactly. So
a Hummer EV.
I'm really curious. I'm really curious to see
And definitely LeBron James.
the demographic between this Hummer EV buyer and the Escalade V buyer, because they're obviously cross shopping, or in theory they would be cross shopping, like powerful huge trucks. But yeah, this is a fantastic choice. I completely
because I think it's difficult.
And the roof comes off of this, which is
the roof
awesome.
does come off, and
yes,
sad
super
fashion.
mega awesome. Absolutely support.
Because it's difficult. I really wanted to go with the tried and true look at just sales volume, and it's F-150. I mean, every single year it's 200,000 units above the next highest selling vehicle per year. It just wipes the competition. But how long will it last? And a Hummer's never going to be a volume selling product. They're not going to, your neighbor's not going to have one. That'll be for the Ford Lightning or whatever electric truck or mainstream unit. But for like what it means to like this, first of all, this vehicle doesn't fit in most other countries, let alone like be able to be purchased.
It barely fits here. I've seen one in person, and it was insane how big it was.
It doesn't fit where we live. You have to live like past the Mississippi River at this point.
Yeah, definitely west of the Mississippi.
Yeah, west of the Mississippi or south of the Mason-Dixon line, or else you're not fitting this anywhere. But it's just I was really looking for a while. I was looking for a percentage of American parts, but I think it's just too new and GM hasn't released the data, or I just don't have access to press material that would say it. But yeah, Hummer EV. I think it's going to be. People are talking about it in ways that like are excitement other than just like nerdy stats of
there's a lot of just like fervor around the vehicle, and I think I think this certainly best my choice, because there are more like I'm interested in the Escalade V because like I love Cadillac history. I also love like big shouty V8s and luxury features, and this has so much more than that. Like everybody remembers the H2, everybody assimilates like Arnold Schwarzenegger and the H1 and Commando, and like the Hummer has its own image and history in and of itself, and now that it's like an EV and it's not like ostentatious that you drive a Vortec powered H2 and 8 miles.
It is ostentatious. It's
I was
you feel slightly less guilty about it, I guess.
But it's a Sequoia friendly ostentatious.
Yeah, I guess so. By like digging up all of Chile to build its batteries.
Right. Yeah, but
it's possible. I know what you mean.
That's the whole EV thing. It's like, oh, we're powering by EV. Well, it's like, okay, well, we don't have the infrastructure for the whole country to drive EV. So your logic is flawed.
You have to have these sort of halo products to push a movement like that. But I agree with you. I think on the points that both of you touched on, and
it also weighs 10,000 pounds.
Literally weighs 10,000 pounds.
Literally.
the Cadillac, I think, almost represents, and this is how I interpret it and how I kind of speculate things are going to potentially look like in the future. But the Escalade will kind of be the way we look at maybe like the town and country in the early 2000s. You know what I mean?
For
It's like
sure. Yeah.
it's like a modern version of a luxury of yesteryear, right? And if we think about town and country, I mean, these Panther platform and
Right.
really just antiquated and body on frame like big sedan that was pioneered in the 60s, if not 50s in America. And it's
Right.
just kind of like trickled away. It's kind of like existed, but then it like peters out.
Yeah.
Whether, different socioeconomic and political things of gas in the next 30 years is obviously going to play a difference. But, because people don't look at the Hummer as the same sort of like luxury brand that
No.
Cadillac does. And then the Escalade, I've said this for a while and I still believe it, in that like the large luxury SUV is our modern day Coupe de Ville, it's
For
our
sure.
modern day Eldorado. We just don't, everyone just wants to be higher up now. We don't have those same sort of, but that's how we like perceive luxury, is basically like huge, but now in big box forms. And
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
that's
people
also
buying
because like you can
Range
do
Rovers.
whatever you want in it.
yeah,
Like you can't
yeah,
do that.
the
in-
luxury
Like you
of
can
space.
literally go wherever you want. If you want to go skiing, you can go skiing. If you want to go to the beach, you can go to the beach, and you tow your boat, you can tow your boat.
It's luxury.
Like that's a modern luxury. Exactly.
And it's always funny how I see that, because that was like when automobiles were first invented, when Rolls Royces were Rolls Royces.
Yeah.
They were just like vehicles you could take anywhere. There weren't roads. There were like 3 roads, but you could take that was how Chris Harris was introducing the Cullinan. It's like, well, original Rolls Royces like didn't drive on roads. Like they did drive off road because
I'm
there
pretty
were
sure you
Right.
can drive a Phantom off road. Like I
like
spend a
today.
fair amount of time around one. They have a lot of
yeah.
ground clearance.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
they're literally gigantic, every
Yeah.
single proportion, which means they also have lots of ground clearance.
yep, yeah. And that's what
Definitely.
they can do. But something that in the brand of like the Hummer EV, and really if we start looking at like how Rivian's trying to, I mean, Rivian's really trying to push the
I
REI.
on that note, I almost said Rivian was the most American car because they try to sell this like super granola image and
the
like
Colorado lifestyle.
minimalist and
Yeah,
like anti-consumerism while selling $120,000 850 horsepower truck,
yeah.
which to me is like the most American shit ever.
So
So
two
conflicting.
things. One, I almost picked the Rivian because I really love that about them, that it's like they just like totally were like, all right, this is our truck, this is our image, like this is what we're going with, and they kind of just like popped out of nowhere and like immediately like garnered some attention because like it is good looking. Americans love trucks. It's fast, way faster than it rightfully should be, to be completely honest. And they really did, kind of like come into this like, it's the type of dude who like, wears like dry fit button downs and like, bird dogs, and then goes like mountain biking on like a $15,000 Porsche bike. Like it's just like they really kind of like picked their segment.
Yeah, it's like it's like the niche Subaru owner that also made some money off Bitcoin.
Yeah, exactly.
now
No,
they can afford a Rivian.
literally, no. That's
what it
exactly
is.
right. But and so the other point that I wanted to make before we deviated too far away was like how you mentioned like the Panther body in the town and country. I think that like you hit the nail totally on the head. Like this is the current version of that, where it's kind of just like, okay, yeah, you could put, you could have a cop car Panther body. You could, put anything in the trunk of a Panther body. You could, it just like it worked. That was kind of like your status quo. And I think that's what's great about the Escalade, and kind of how we're gonna see the Escalade right now going forward. Because like what comes to mind is like, when you think like when people think of like New York City, they think of yellow Panther body taxis. And I think in 30 years, when you think of like,
They're gonna be black Escalades.
New York City, yeah, you're gonna think of black Escalade Ubers, because it's like it doesn't matter if you're Rudy Giuliani, Jay-Z, or just some dude who works at the top of Penn Plaza. Like you're probably gonna get in a black Escalade at some point and go where you need to be.
No,
driven
100%.
to.
And I think on like the more technical and engineering end, like you get your design brief for the next Escalade, right? It's not like the way you approach it isn't like the Rivian. It's like we bring all these factors. We want it to be a carabiner. We want it to be REI subscription, whatever, and we're gonna put it into one car. You go like, okay, here's what works, which is like 98% of it. Here's Super Cruise. Here's whatever, Apple CarPlay, blah 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 blah. We're gonna throw it into that like formula. It's just adding. If you have a cookie recipe, you're adding new chocolate chips or whatever. Whereas
Yeah, right.
A Rivian, they're trying to make a completely different dish, and I think that's kind of what happened with the Panther body. I mean, we had that formula forever, and unfortunately, I mean, it's they're kind of, the days are numbered on them, but
For sure.
they're gonna last pretty, like, it's gonna keep going for a while. It's easily Cadillac's most successful product, and I will give it props to GM, and the Hummer's part of this as well. Is that, I mean, speaking of Mach-E or Ford Lightning, or I mean, Fiat's like another decade behind, but GM was always the first to try really weird concepts, and most of them failed. I mean, even the Volt was a fantastic car for what it was. The Volt was like really the first American.
Or like the ELR.
ELR, yeah, like what was an ELR? And it's just like, it was so ahead of its time. And it's going to be one of those Radwood cars that you're going to look back on and go like, wow, this was way ahead of its time. But it was just, no one bought it because it was like $100,000 and it had like 50 miles of range. But
yeah,
the concept was there really, really early on. And even,
sure.
I mean, look at, I'm really pushing it back now, but in like, I think 2004, early 2000s, they came up with that GM like skateboard like battery concept, which was like a modular way. We're kind of returning back to body on frame in a way. And that's really what, I mean, that's what Lucid Air is. It's what Rivian is. It's what Tesla is. They have their own architecture, and Tesla just pops different bodies on. But GM did that concept in the early 2000s. They just never made anything of it. But that,
Yeah.
I will applaud GM in that they have been consistently the first and also like the biggest failures of like the cutting edge automotive field. But I think that maybe it's a branding thing, maybe it's a leadership thing, it's a marketing thing, it's an engineering thing. But
I think it's a GM thing that they just, because they always do this. They always attempt to lead, don't do it correctly, and then someone else just does it better.
Yeah,
it's with GM's entire history.
But I
think
think
EV concept they had.
The only thing that they haven't done that with is the Corvette.
So
everything else is.
I don't disagree.
Them. Yeah,
I don't disagree, but I think, like, to the exact point of like why the Rivian would be it's like a very viable contender in this conversation is because it's this whole like, whether it works or not, we're gonna try it. So the Rivian, by no, it wasn't luck, right? That this like, it was well timed and it succeeded as being, this REI subscription of a truck, as Code perfectly described. But, I like that in and of itself is just like very American, right? It's like, okay, I'm gonna go for it, like almost to the point of where it's like you could express it as like the American dream, right? Like people who move here with nothing, people who have gone, bust to boom to bust to boom again. Like 50 Cent is a great example. He, got shot 9 times, made a ton of money rapping, lost all of his money rapping, bought into vitamin water, made $400 million off vitamin water, and like has just rode the wave. And it's like, the GM has failed on a lot of things, but I ultimately think that we're super fortunate that GM is as big as they are, that they can try these things, fail, scrap it, like sweep it under the rug because they like don't want to keep showing these, little scritches on their arms that they keep falling off their bike. But ultimately it's like, they still know how to ride a bike. They make great trucks. They make, good cars, and they have the financial backing to like keep trying this stuff, which is, the American innovation that I think like, we're kind of celebrating in this episode.
Also, what's more American than borrowing money from the government and they're trying to do that real well.
And then failing.
Like, immediately. No, I think those are all really good points. It's really hard not to bring up Tesla in this conversation. I mean, we're talking
No,
about
it's not. No,
sorry.
it's not. It's so easy to just avoid Tesla as an entity.
But you
So
can
terrible.
have to bring it up because like
I mean,
with Rivian wouldn't have existed without Tesla. Let's be honest. I mean, Tesla, with what they did, they basically proved the battery concept, the pure battery concept can actually work. And then
Well,
now we're seeing the rest of these
maybe.
companies like jumping in. I mean, how is it
I
a
don't know.
maybe? What I mean, there's of a pure like non-assisted, not even range extended, pure battery concept of now you can have over 200 miles of pure electric range. I think it brought to them every controversial bit about Tesla aside, you have to give the flowers where they're due. And
Well,
now we're
okay,
seeing
and
other
the first gen Model S was impressive and revolutionary. I'll give it that. But they haven't done a single cool thing other than that.
I agree. I think the most of the stuff that's around it is built off of that Model S concept, which they've made it faster, and the question about autopilot stuff is now here, and that's kind of like what's taking over the buzz. But yeah, I mean that Model S concept that's what I'm talking about. We're talking about 2010. I mean,
Yeah.
there was nothing else that was even remotely, and they're still playing catch up today. I mean, they're building most of their architecture on pretty advanced computer chips that a lot of they're really not hit by the chip shortage the same way that other companies are. But
yeah, but there's a reason.
That's for a different concept.
There's a reason why other companies are not using as powerful chips. That's because they actually work.
Yeah,
Tesla's using non-automotive chips in an automotive setting. That's not how the car industry actually works.
Yeah, no, you're right. There's always a flip side to that argument, but we should talk about that another time. I think this
I think it's a great
perfectly ends our July 4th episode. So this will be released on July 4th. We hope you all are doing very American things.
Yes, happy safe
American
to everybody. Happy Canada Day to our friends. If you watch this, thanks for being patient with us. It's been a very hectic couple of weeks. We'll have to do kind of like a life
Congrats on the new job. I have to say that publicly.
Yeah, actually, Habernella is close to both me and Pereira. So
yeah, so we can discuss that a little bit more in the next episode. But
it was actually a shame, and I have to say, Toby invited us to go to an event, but it was like this Thursday, like July 7th, and that's not happening.
I can't.
We're gonna have to do something else. We'll figure it out.
We'll have to find another event. If you've made it this far, thank you so much. Feel free to drop a comment if you have your own thoughts on what the most American vehicle would be here, there, or present.
Awesome. We'll see you guys later.
Great.